Josiah Thornton pressed his dead daughter's ribbon against his lips and whispered goodbye for the 300th time. Then, a 9-year-old girl kicked open his door bleeding from her temple and said 5 words that changed everything. "They took my baby sister." He should have thrown her out. Should have gone back to his whiskey and his grief and his slow dying. But she looked at him with eyes that had already seen too much, and she said, "You're the only one who might still have a heart left to break." If you want to know what happens next, subscribe to our channel. Follow this story to the very end, and comment your city below. I want to see how far our story travels. The wealthiest rancher in Wheeler County sat in his dead daughter's room holding a pink ribbon that still smelled like her hair. 3 winters now. 3 winters of sitting in this chair talking to a ghost who never answered back. "I bought more land today, Emma," Josiah Thornton whispered to the darkness. "That stretch along the river you always wanted to picnic by, it's ours now." The wind howled outside. December in Wyoming territory didn't forgive anyone. Not ranchers, not orphans, not grieving fathers who'd forgotten how to live. He lifted the whiskey bottle to his lips. Didn't drink, just held it there like maybe the burn would remind him he was still breathing. "Rosa thinks I should eat more." He almost smiled. "You know how she gets. Fusses over me like I'm one of her grandchildren." The chair across from him stayed empty. The bed stayed made. The doll on the windowsill stayed dusty. Emma's Sunday dress still hung in the wardrobe. Rosa had tried to pack it away once. Josiah had fired her on the spot, then begged her to come back an hour later. Some things couldn't be moved. Some things had to stay exactly where they were, or the whole world would come apart. "I'm tired, baby girl," he said. "I'm so damn tired." A crash downstairs. Josiah didn't move. Could be anything. The wind a shudder, one of the hands coming in from the cold. Then Rosa's voice, sharp and startled. "Dios mío, child, what happened to you?" Then a girl's voice, young but fierce. "Where is he? The rancher. I need the rancher." Josiah set down the bottle. His hand moved to the ribbon, tucked it back into his vest pocket, close to his heart where it belonged. Boots on the stairs. Running. A child's boots. His door burst open. She was maybe 9 or 10, skinny as a fence post wrapped in a coat 3 sizes too big. Blood ran from a cut above her eye. Her hands were shaking, but her jaw was set like iron. Behind her, Rosa clutched the doorframe, breathless. "Senor, I tried to stop her." "You're Josiah Thornton." The girl stepped into the room. "The one they call the broken man of Wheeler County." "Who's asking?" "My name's Prudence Holloway. Folks call me Prue." She lifted her chin. "And I ain't leaving till you help me." Josiah studied her. The torn dress under that oversized coat. The shoes held together with rope. The eyes that burned with something he recognized all too well. Desperation. The kind that comes after hope has died and rage takes its place. "Rosa," he said quietly. "Get some water and bandages." "Senor." "Now." Rosa hesitated, then nodded and disappeared. Josiah rose from the chair slowly. His knees ached. Everything ached these days. "You're bleeding." "Don't matter. Sit down." "I said it don't matter." The girl's voice cracked. "They took her. They took Grace, my baby sister. She's only 6 years old and they dragged her away while I watched and I couldn't stop them, and nobody will help me." The words tumbled out like rocks in an avalanche. Josiah saw the moment her strength gave out, saw her shoulders start to shake, saw the tears she'd been fighting finally win. "Who?" he asked. "Who took her?" "Deputy Sloan." "And another man, big one, didn't know him." Prue swiped at her eyes with a dirty fist. "I tried to fight. Bit the deputy so hard he bled, but he hit me and—" She touched the cut on her temple. "When I woke up, she was gone." "Where?" "The mines. The old silver mines up in the mountains." Prue's voice steadied. "I followed their tracks far as I could before the snow covered them. But I saw which direction they went. I know where they're taking her." Josiah felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. The abandoned mines. Everyone knew the stories. Children who disappeared. Bodies never found. Whispers about men in high places who paid good money for young workers who couldn't fight back. "You tell the marshal." Prue laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Marshal said I was hysterical. Told me girls like me shouldn't make accusations against respectable men like Deputy Sloan. The preacher said to pray. The doctor, the school teacher, anyone. Mister, I've been to every door in this town." Prue's hands balled into fists. "They all said the same thing. Not my problem. Nothing I can do. Just an orphan anyway, nobody's going to miss her." She stepped closer, and Josiah saw the firelight catch the tears on her cheeks. "But you lost somebody too. I heard about your girl. Emma, right? The fever." Josiah's jaw tightened. "Don't. I ain't trying to hurt you. I'm trying to make you understand." Prue reached into her coat and pulled out a locket tarnished silver on a thin chain. "This was my mama's. She died 2 years ago. Put a piece of her hair inside before she went. Said as long as I kept it close, she'd always be with me." She opened it. Inside a curl of dark hair. "Grace has got the same locket. Mama gave us each one." Prue's voice broke. "She's all I got left, mister. The only family I got in this whole world. And they took her into those mines and nobody cares, and she's probably so scared right now. Stop. And cold and crying for me. And I promised Mama I'd protect her." I said stop. Prue went quiet. She was shaking now, trembling all over like a leaf in a storm. Rosa appeared in the doorway, with water and cloth. She looked at Josiah, looked at the girl, and her eyes went soft. "Come, Nina," she said gently. "Let me clean that wound. I ain't leaving till he answers." Josiah walked to the window. Outside, snow was falling thick and fast. The kind of snow that buried secrets. The kind that killed anyone foolish enough to ride into the mountains. "Why me?" he asked without turning around. "Out of everyone in town. Why'd you come here?" "Because you're rich enough to do something about it." "Money doesn't buy everything." "No, but it buys men with guns. It buys horses. It buys supplies." Prue's voice hardened. "And because everyone says you're already dead inside, that losing Emma killed you, that you just sit up here drinking and waiting to join her." He turned. "And that's supposed to make me help you. It's supposed to make you understand." Prue met his eyes, held them. "You know what it's like to lose somebody. You know how it feels when your heart gets ripped out. But your girl, she's gone. Nothing you can do to bring her back." The words hit him like a fist. "Grace is still breathing, mister. She's still out there. And maybe, just maybe, if you help me find her, you'll remember what it feels like to save something instead of just watching it die." Silence. The fire crackled. The wind screamed. The snow fell. Rosa crossed herself quietly. Josiah Thornton stood in his dead daughter's room, looking at a child who had nothing, who had lost everything, who had somehow found the courage to keep fighting when the whole world had turned its back. He thought about Emma, about the fever that took her while he was away buying cattle, about arriving home 3 hours too late, about holding her small, cold hand and promising he'd never forgive himself. He'd kept that promise. 3 years of dying slowly. 3 years of whiskey and silence and a room that would never change. But this girl was right. Emma was gone. Nothing could bring her back. Grace was alive. "Rosa," he said, "get the girl some food, something warm." "Senor," "and prepare the guest room, the one at the end of the hall." He paused. "Not Emma's room." Prue's eyes widened. "Does that mean—" "It means I need to think." Josiah pulled the ribbon from his pocket, ran his thumb across the faded pink silk. "And you need to eat. You look like you haven't had a meal in days." 3 days, Prue admitted. Been too busy trying to find help. Something twisted in Josiah's chest. 3 days. A child alone, hungry, hurt, going door to door in the dead of winter, begging for help that never came, while he sat in his room talking to ghosts. Go with Rosa, he said. We'll talk more in the morning. Prue didn't move. Promise me. What? Promise me you'll help. I ain't going to sleep unless you promise. He should say no, should send her away, should go back to his whiskey and his grief and his slow waiting for death. But Emma's voice whispered in his memory, Be good, Papa. That's all I ever wanted. Just be good. I promise, he heard himself say. Now go eat. Prue nodded once, sharp and fierce. Then she followed Rosa out of the room, leaving Josiah alone with his ghosts. He walked back to the window. The snow was getting worse. What have I done, Emma? He murmured. What am I getting myself into? The wind didn't answer, but somewhere in the darkness he could have sworn he heard his daughter laugh. The dining room had not seen 3 people in 3 years. Josiah sat at the head of the table, not eating, just watching Prue devour her 4th biscuit. The girl ate like she was afraid someone might take the food away. Fast, desperate, barely chewing. Rosa stood by the kitchen door, her rosary moving through her fingers. Slow down, Josiah said. You'll make yourself sick. Prue paused, mid-bite, looked at him, suspicious. You ain't going to take it back, are you? The food? No. Some folks do that, give you something nice, then snatch it away when you start to believe it's real. Josiah thought about all the things that had been snatched from him. His wife dead in childbirth, his daughter dead from fever, his faith in God, his reason to keep breathing. I keep my word, he said, when I give it. Prue studied him for a long moment, then went back to eating, slower this time. Tell me about Grace, Josiah said. What do you want to know? Everything. Prue set down her biscuit. Her hands, he noticed, had stopped shaking. She's 6, turns 7 in March if... She caught herself. When we find her. She's got blonde hair like Mama, blue eyes, a scar on her chin from when she fell out of a tree last spring. What's she like? Quiet, shy, scared of loud noises ever since the thunderstorm that killed our pa. Prue's jaw tightened. Lightning hit the barn while he was inside. Grace saw the whole thing. Where were you? In the house with Mama. She was already sick by then. Couldn't get out of bed. Prue stared at the table. I ran out to help Pa, but the fire was too big. By the time the neighbors came, there wasn't nothing left. Rosa made a small sound of sympathy. After that, it was just us 3. Mama, me, and Grace. Prue picked at her biscuit. Mama held on for another year. Consumption, the doctor said. She went peaceful at least. Fell asleep one night and just didn't wake up. And then the county took us, put us in the orphanage on the edge of town. Prue's voice went flat. Mrs. Harwood runs it. She ain't cruel exactly, but she ain't kind neither. Too many children, not enough food. You learn quick to look out for yourself. Josiah thought about the orphanage. He'd donated money to it once at Judge Ashworth's charity auction. Felt good about himself for a whole week afterward. Never once wondered what happened to the children inside. How'd they get Grace? He asked. We was out collecting firewood. The orphanage makes the older kids do chores, earn our keep. Prue's hands curled into fists. Grace wasn't supposed to come, but she hates being alone. So I let her follow. She stopped, swallowed hard. We was in the trees when they came. 2 men on horses. I recognized Deputy Sloan from when he came to talk to Mrs. Harwood last month. Don't know who the other one was. Big, mean-looking. What happened? They saw Grace first. Sloan said something about her being just the right age. The big one grabbed her before I could even scream. Prue's voice cracked, but she pushed through. I ran at him, bit his arm so hard I tasted blood. He threw me off and I hit my head on a rock. She touched the wound on her temple. When I woke up, they was gone, just hoof prints in the snow heading toward the mountains. Rosa crossed herself again. Santa Maria Madre de Dios. I followed the tracks as far as I could, Prue continued. But the snow kept falling. After a while they disappeared. All I know is they went toward the old mines. Josiah stood, walked to the window. Outside the storm raged. The mines have been abandoned for 5 years, he said. After the silver ran out. Nobody goes up there anymore. Somebody does. Prue's voice hardened. And they're taking children. You don't know that for certain. I know what I saw, mister. I know Deputy Sloan is supposed to protect people, not steal little girls. And I know that nobody in this town will lift a finger because they're all scared of... She stopped abruptly. Josiah turned. Scared of what? Prue looked away. Scared of who, Prudence? Judge Ashworth. The name hit Josiah like a physical blow. Cornelius Ashworth. Pillar of the community. Church elder. Head of the orphanage board. The man who'd given the eulogy at Emma's funeral. What does Judge Ashworth have to do with this? I don't know for certain. Prue met his eyes. But I heard Mrs. Harwood talking to him once, about placements, about children who got sent east to new families. Except those children never wrote back, never sent word they'd arrived safe. A cold feeling spread through Josiah's chest. You're saying... I'm saying children disappear from that orphanage, mister. And nobody asks questions because the judge sits on every board in this county and everybody owes him something. Rosa had gone pale. Senor, if this is true... It's true. Prue's voice was steel. I don't got proof. Just what I seen with my own eyes. But Grace ain't going to disappear like the others. I won't let her. Josiah thought about all the dinners he'd shared with Cornelius Ashworth, all the handshakes, all the donations to causes the judge recommended. He thought about Emma and how Ashworth had stood at her grave and said such beautiful things about the tragedy of children taken too soon. Had he been taking children himself? All this time, Mr. Thornton. Prue's voice cut through his thoughts. I know it sounds crazy. I know you got no reason to believe some orphan girl over a judge. But I swear on my mama's grave I'm telling you the truth. Josiah looked at her, really looked. He saw the desperation, the fear, the grief. But underneath all that, he saw something else, something fierce and unbreakable. Hope, the kind that survived everything the world threw at it. Rosa, he said quietly, make up the guest room and draw a hot bath. The girl needs rest. Senor, what are you going to do? Josiah walked to the gun cabinet in the corner, pulled out his father's rifle, checked to make sure it was loaded. I'm going to find out the truth, he said. And if what she says is right, if children are being taken from that orphanage, then I'm going to burn the whole rotten system to the ground. Prue stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. You believe me? I believe something's wrong in this town. I've believed it for a while, I just didn't want to see it. Josiah met her eyes. I was too busy drowning in my own grief to notice anyone else's. So you'll help. You'll help me find Grace. Josiah thought about Emma, about the ribbon in his pocket, about 3 years of dying slowly while the world kept spinning. Maybe this was why he was still breathing. Maybe this was the reason he hadn't put a bullet in his brain all those dark nights when he'd held the gun and wondered why he should bother waking up tomorrow. Maybe he'd been kept alive for this, for her. We ride at dawn, he said. First light, before the storm gets any worse. Prue threw herself at him, her thin arms wrapped around his waist, and she held on like he was the only solid thing in a world made of smoke. Josiah froze. He hadn't been touched in 3 years, hadn't allowed it, had built walls so high and thick that nobody could reach him. But this girl crashed right through. His hand moved slowly, awkwardly, settled on the back of her head. We'll find her, he heard himself say. I promise. Prue looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. Why are you helping me? Because Emma would have wanted him to. Because he'd been dead for 3 years, and this was his chance to live again. Because a child had looked at the whole town and decided he was the only one worth asking. Because somebody should, he said simply. Now go get some sleep. It's a long ride to the mountains. That night, Josiah sat in Emma's room one more time. The ribbon lay in his palm, soft and worn. I'm going to do something tomorrow, baby girl, he whispered. Something dangerous. Might not come back. The doll on the windowsill watched him with button eyes. But there's a little girl out there alone and scared, just like you were at the end. His voice cracked. And I couldn't save you. God knows I tried, but I couldn't get there in time. He pressed the ribbon to his heart. Maybe I can save this one. Maybe that's worth something. Maybe... He stopped, swallowed. Maybe you sent her to me. I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. Silence. Then so soft he almost missed it. The wind chime outside Emma's window began to sing. There was no wind. The storm had died down, leaving only stillness and snow, but the chimes rang anyway. A gentle melody, Emma's favorite. Josiah closed his eyes. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for not giving up on me. When he opened his eyes, the chimes had stopped. But for the first time in 3 years, Josiah Thornton felt something besides grief. He felt purpose. Dawn broke cold and gray. Rosa had packed saddlebags with food, water, bandages, and ammunition. She stood on the porch as Josiah led 2 horses from the barn, her rosary clutched tight. Senor, this is madness, she said. The mines are dangerous. The weather, I know. Then why? Josiah looked back at the house, at the window that had been Emma's room. Because I've been dying for 3 years, Rosa, and this is my chance to live for something again. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. She crossed herself, then stepped forward and pressed something into his hand. A small wooden cross on a leather cord. My grandmother gave this to me when I left Sonora, she said. It's brought me through bandits' drought, and a husband who drank himself to death. Maybe it will bring you home too. Josiah slipped the cord over his neck. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just come back. Rosa gripped his arm. And bring those children with you. The front door opened. Prue emerged, dressed in a borrowed coat that almost fit her hair braided back from her face. She looked different this morning. Still small, still thin, but there was something new in her eyes. Hope. Real hope. Ready? She asked. Josiah mounted his horse. Ready. They rode out as the sun crested the mountains, painting the snow pink and gold. Behind them, Rosa watched until they disappeared over the ridge. Then she went inside to pray. They'd been riding for 2 hours when Prue finally spoke. You know there might be more than 2 men, right? I know. And we don't know exactly where in the mines they're keeping her. I know. And if Judge Ashworth really is behind this, he's got half the county in his pocket. We might be riding into a trap. Josiah looked at her. You trying to talk me out of this? No. Prue's jaw set. I'm trying to make sure you understand what we're getting into. I understand just fine. Then why are you still coming? Josiah didn't answer right away. The horses picked their way through the snow steady and sure. When Emma died, he said finally, I thought God was punishing me. For being proud. For loving my money more than my family. For not being there when she needed me most. Prue listened in silence. I spent 3 years hating myself. 3 years waiting to die. 3 years sitting in that room talking to a ghost, hoping she'd forgive me. Did she... Josiah touched the ribbon in his pocket. I think maybe she's been trying to. I just wasn't ready to hear it. They rode on. My mama said something before she died, Prue said quietly. She said the dead don't want us to follow them. They want us to live, really live, and carry their love forward into the world. Smart woman. The smartest. Prue's voice wavered. I just hope I can make her proud. You already have. Prue looked at him sharply. How do you figure? You walked into a saloon full of men who should have helped you and didn't. You went door to door in a blizzard, bleeding, half frozen, begging for someone to care about your sister. And when everybody said no, you found the one man in town broken enough to say yes. He almost smiled. That takes guts, Prudence Holloway. More guts than most grown men I've known. Prue was quiet for a moment. Then she straightened in her saddle, lifted her chin. My name's Prue, she said. Only Mama called me Prudence. All right, Prue. Josiah tipped his hat. Let's go save your sister. They rode on toward the mountains, two broken souls heading into darkness, carrying nothing but grief and hope and the faint chance of redemption. Behind them, the valley stretched white and silent. Ahead, somewhere in those frozen peaks, a 6-year-old girl waited in the dark, praying for a miracle she'd almost stopped believing in. And she didn't know it yet, but that miracle was coming. It rode a black horse, wore a dead girl's ribbon over its heart, and had finally remembered what it meant to be alive. The old trading post appeared through the snow like a ghost refusing to die. Josiah pulled his horse to a stop. They'd been riding for nearly 4 hours, and the cold had sunk into his bones deep enough to make his old war wounds ache. We need to rest the horses, he said, and warm up before we hit the mountain pass. Prue shook her head. Every minute we waste. Won't matter if we freeze to death before we get there. Josiah dismounted his knees, protesting. 15 minutes, that's all. The trading post door swung open before they reached it. A woman stood in the doorway. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled back severe, wearing a man's coat over a practical dress. Her eyes moved from Josiah to Prue to the blood still crusted on the girl's temple. Get inside, she said. Both of you, now. Josiah hesitated. We don't want trouble. Neither do I, but you've got a child bleeding from her head, and you're both half frozen. The woman stepped aside. I'm a doctor. Let me help. Prue looked at Josiah. He nodded once. They went in. The trading post was small but warm. A fire crackled in the stone hearth. Shelves lined with supplies, medical equipment on a table by the window. Not a trading post at all, Josiah realized. A clinic. Sit. The woman pointed Prue toward a chair. Let me look at that wound. It's fine. It's infected. The doctor was already gathering supplies. Another day and you'd have a fever. Another 2 and you might lose the eye. Prue went pale. Sit down, child. I don't bite. Josiah watched as the woman worked. Quick, efficient movements. No wasted motion. She cleaned the wound, applied something that made Prue hiss through her teeth, then bandaged it with practiced hands. You're good at that, Josiah said. I should be. Spent 10 years patching up miners before the silver ran out. The doctor didn't look up. Name's Clara Weston. I run this clinic for folks who can't afford the doctor in town. Josiah Thornton. Clara's hands stilled, just for a second. Then she continued working. I know who you are, Mr. Thornton. Everyone knows the broken man of Wheeler County. Her voice carried no judgment, just fact. Question is, what are you doing out here in a blizzard with a wounded child? We're looking for her sister, Josiah said. She was taken. Clara tied off the bandage. Her eyes met Josiah's, and he saw something flicker there. Recognition. Fear. Taken where? The old mines. Clara stood abruptly, walked to the window. Her shoulders were rigid. You should turn back. Can't do that. You don't understand. Clara's voice dropped. The mines aren't just abandoned tunnels, Mr. Thornton. They're a graveyard. Children go in. They don't come out. Prue jumped up from the chair. You know about this? You know what they're doing up there. Clara didn't turn around. I know enough to stay quiet, enough to keep breathing. My sister is 6 years old. Prue's voice cracked. She's scared of the dark. She cries when there's thunder. And she's in those mines right now alone, waiting for me to save her." Silence. Clara's hands trembled against the windowsill. "Please," Prue whispered. "If you know something. Anything." "I had a patient once." Clara's voice was barely audible. "A boy maybe 8 years old. Escaped from the mines somehow. Made it all the way down the mountain before they found him." She turned. Her face was ashen. "He told me things. About tunnels that go deep into the mountain. About children being sorted like cattle. About men in fine suits who came to inspect the merchandise." Clara's jaw tightened. "I tried to help him. Tried to hide him. But someone talked, and Deputy Sloan came knocking." "What happened?" Josiah asked. "They took him back." Clara's eyes glistened. "I never saw him again. And the next morning, I found a note on my door. 3 words, keep quiet, live." Prue grabbed Clara's hands. "Then help us stop them. Help us save Grace." "I can't." "You're a doctor. You took an oath." "I took an oath to do no harm." Clara pulled away. "And going against Judge Ashworth, that's harm to everyone I care about. He owns this territory. The marshal, the mayor, half the ranchers in the county. Anyone who crosses him disappears." Josiah stepped forward. "Then why are you telling us this?" Clara looked at him. Really looked, and something in her expression shifted. "Because I'm tired," she said quietly. "Tired of pretending I don't hear children crying in my nightmares. Tired of telling myself there's nothing I can do." She glanced at Prue. "Tired of watching little girls lose everything while the rest of us look away." "Then come with us." The words surprised Josiah as much as they surprised Clara. "What?" "Come with us." He didn't know why he was asking, didn't know why it suddenly felt important. "We might need a doctor before this is over. And you know more about those mines than we do." Clara shook her head. "I can't. If Ashworth finds out, he's going to find out anyway." Josiah's voice hardened. "The moment we ride into those mines, he'll know someone's coming for him. Might as well have a doctor on our side when the shooting starts." Clara stared at him, then at Prue, then back at him. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. This is suicide." "Maybe." Josiah touched the ribbon in his pocket. "But I've been dying for 3 years. Might as well go out doing something that matters." Clara was quiet for a long moment. The fire crackled. The wind howled outside. Then she walked to a cabinet, pulled out a medical bag, and started packing supplies. "There's a back trail up the mountain," she said without looking up. "Miners used it before the main road was built. It's dangerous, but it'll cut 2 hours off the journey." Prue's face lit up. "You're coming?" "Someone has to keep you fools alive." Clara snapped the bag shut. "But if we're doing this, we need more than a grieving rancher and a wounded child." "What do you mean?" Clara moved to the door, opened it, and let out a sharp whistle. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a figure emerged from the trees. An old man on a gray horse, his face weathered like ancient leather, his eyes dark and knowing. "This is Gray Elk," Clara said. "He's been watching the mines for years, waiting for someone brave enough or foolish enough to do something about it." Gray Elk dismounted slowly. His gaze found Josiah held it. "You are the one who speaks to the dead," the old man said. "I have heard your voice on the wind. Your daughter's spirit is restless." Josiah's throat tightened. "You knew Emma." "I know all the children who pass through these mountains, the living and the dead." Gray Elk turned to Prue. "Your sister sings in the darkness, a hymn, the same one they sang at your mother's grave." Prue's hand flew to her mouth. "You've seen her. She's alive. She lives, but the window closes. They move the children soon. Tomorrow maybe, the day after." Gray Elk's voice dropped. "If you want to save her, you must move now. No more waiting. No more talk." Josiah looked at Clara, at Gray Elk, at Prue. 4 people against an empire of corruption. A grieving rancher, a frightened doctor, an old man carrying decades of pain, and a little girl with nothing left to lose. It wasn't enough. It couldn't possibly be enough, but it was all they had. "Then let's ride," Josiah said. They mounted up and headed into the storm. The back trail was everything Clara had warned them about. Narrow ledges over sheer drops, ice-covered rocks that sent horses sliding, wind that cut through layers of wool like they were paper. Josiah rode in front, testing each step before the others followed. Clara came next, her medical bag strapped tight across her chest. Prue followed, her small hands gripping the reins so hard her knuckles had gone white. Gray Elk brought up the rear, silent as shadow. "How much further?" Prue called out. "Another hour to the mine entrance," Gray Elk answered. "If the storm doesn't slow us." The storm was getting worse. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Josiah could barely see his horse's ears, let alone the path ahead. "We need to find shelter," Clara shouted. "Wait this out." "No!" Prue kicked her horse forward, trying to pass Josiah. "We keep moving." "Girl, listen to me." "You listen." Prue's voice cracked. "Every minute we waste, Grace gets further away. Every minute she thinks I'm not coming, that I forgot about her, that I left her alone in the dark." Her horse stumbled. Prue screamed as the animal's front legs went out from under it. Josiah moved without thinking. He grabbed Prue around the waist, yanked her from the saddle just as her horse went down. They hit the ground hard, rolling away from the edge of the cliff. The horse scrambled back to its feet, unhurt but terrified. Prue was shaking, sobbing. "I have to get to her. I have to." "You will." Josiah held her tight. "But not if you're dead. Understand?" She didn't answer, just buried her face in his coat and cried. Clara dismounted, moved toward them. "Is she hurt?" "Scared. Cold." Josiah looked up. "We need that shelter." Gray Elk pointed through the snow. "There. An outcropping. We can wait out the worst of the storm." They made it to the shelter just as the blizzard turned deadly. The outcropping wasn't much, a shallow cave, barely big enough for 4 people and 3 horses, but it blocked the wind and kept them alive. Josiah built a small fire while Clara checked Prue for injuries. Gray Elk stood at the cave entrance watching the storm like it held answers only he could read. "The storm will pass in 2 hours," he said without turning around. "We can make the mines by nightfall." "Will that be soon enough?" Josiah asked. Gray Elk was silent for a long moment. "My grandson was taken from these mountains 15 years ago," he said finally. "Samuel. He had his mother's smile and his father's stubborn spirit. I searched for 3 years, followed every trail, asked every question. Finally, a dying miner told me where the children were taken." Josiah set down the firewood. "What happened?" "I arrived too late. Samuel had been dead for 2 winters, worked to death in a Colorado mine. He was 9 years old." Gray Elk's voice carried no emotion, but his hands trembled. "I have waited ever since, watching, praying, hoping someone would come who could succeed where I failed." "And you think that's us?" Gray Elk turned. His eyes found Josiah's. "Your daughter's spirit burns bright in the shadow world. She has been calling out for years. Not for herself she is at peace. For you." The old man stepped closer. "She wants you to live, Josiah Thornton. She wants you to save the ones you still can." Josiah felt the words hit him like a physical blow. His hand moved to the ribbon in his pocket. "How do you know that?" "The dead speak to those who listen." Gray Elk's gaze softened. "Tonight, when we enter the mines, you will be tested. The darkness will show you your deepest fears, your greatest failures, everything you have been running from." "I ain't running." "You have been running for 3 years. Sitting in a dead child's room is still running, Mr. Thornton. You simply convinced yourself you were standing still." Josiah had no answer for that. Because it was true. Clara approached her, expression troubled. "The girl's exhausted but unhurt. She's sleeping now. Good. Josiah watched the fire dance. Let her rest. She's going to need her strength. Clara sat beside him close enough that he could feel the warmth of her shoulder. Can I ask you something? Depends on the question. Why are you really doing this? Clara's voice was soft. You didn't know this girl yesterday. You had no stake in her sister's fate. You could have said no, gone back to your ranch, your whiskey, your grief. Josiah stared into the flames. I promised my daughter something once, he said. When she was small. She asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I laughed because I was already grown. But she was serious. She said, Papa, grown-ups can still become things. So what do you want to become? What did you tell her? I told her I wanted to become good. Josiah's voice cracked. Not rich, not powerful, not important. Just good. And she smiled and said, Then be good, Papa. That's all I ever wanted. He pulled the ribbon from his pocket, held it in the firelight. I forgot that promise. After she died, I forgot everything except the pain. But last night that girl looked at me with her sister's life in my hands, and I remembered. Clara watched him. Something shifted in her expression. You know what I see when I look at you, Mr. Thornton? A broken man. A man who's almost ready to stop being broken. She stood, brushed off her coat. Get some sleep. We've got a long night ahead. She walked to check on Prue, leaving Josiah alone with the fire and the weight of everything he'd been carrying. He looked at the ribbon one last time. Then he tucked it back in his pocket and closed his eyes. And for the first time in 3 years, he didn't dream of Emma dying. He dreamed of her laughing. The storm broke just before dusk. They rode hard through the settling snow, pushing the horses as fast as safety allowed. The mine entrance loomed ahead, a black mouth in the mountainside that seemed to swallow the fading light. Gray Elk held up his hand. They stopped. Listen, he whispered. Josiah strained his ears. At first, nothing. Then, voices. Men talking. The clink of metal. Guards, Clara breathed. How many? Gray Elk closed his eyes, focused. 2 at the entrance. More inside. Perhaps 6. Perhaps 10. That's too many, Clara said. We need another plan. There is no other plan. Prue's voice was steady. We go in and we get Grace out. Simple as that. It's not simple. It is to me. Prue looked at Josiah. Mr. Thornton, you promised. He had promised, and Josiah Thornton kept his word. Gray Elk, he said quietly. Is there another way in? The old man nodded slowly. A ventilation shaft 1/2 mile west. The miners used it when the main entrance collapsed. It is small, dangerous, but it leads directly to the holding chambers. Then that's where Prue and I go. Josiah turned to Clara. You and Gray Elk create a distraction at the main entrance. Draw the guards away. And if we get caught, then you run. His voice hardened. No heroics. You run and you don't look back. Clara's jaw tightened. I didn't come all this way to run. You came to save children. If we fail, there are other children who'll need saving someday. You stay alive to save them. For a long moment, Clara held his gaze. Then she nodded. Be careful in there, she said quietly. The darkness in those mines, it changes people, shows them things they don't want to see. I've seen the worst already. Have you? Clara reached out, touched his arm. Come back, Josiah. Whatever you find in there, whatever the darkness shows you, come back. He covered her hand with his own. I will. Then he and Prue disappeared into the gathering night, heading west toward the ventilation shaft, toward the darkness, toward whatever waited below. The shaft was everything Gray Elk had warned them about. narrow, crumbling, barely wide enough for a grown man to squeeze through. The air smelled of ancient dust and something else. Something sharp and metallic. Fear, Josiah realized. The walls had absorbed decades of it. "Stay close," he whispered to Prue. "And quiet. Sound carries in these tunnels." They crawled through the darkness, Josiah's lantern casting just enough light to see the next few feet. His ribs screamed from the position. His shoulder throbbed where an old bullet wound objected to the cold. Behind him, Prue moved in silence. Not a whimper. Not a complaint. The girl had steel in her spine. The shaft opened into a wider tunnel after what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Josiah emerged first, checked both directions, then helped Prue down. "Which way?" she breathed. He listened. From the left, distant voices, the clang of machinery. From the right, silence. Except not quite silence. Something else. Something faint. Singing. Prue heard it too. Her whole body went rigid. "Grace," she whispered. "That's Grace's voice." She started running before Josiah could stop her. He cursed under his breath and followed his boots echoing off the stone walls no matter how carefully he stepped. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, and there in the dim light of dying torches Josiah saw them. Cages, a dozen of them rough-hewn and brutal, lining the far wall. And inside, huddled together for warmth, were children. Josiah counted quickly. 8, maybe 9. Small bodies, dirty faces, eyes that had seen too much. And in the corner cage, a blonde girl with a scar on her chin singing softly to herself. "Grace!" Prue's scream echoed through the chamber. "Grace!" The blonde girl's head snapped up. Her eyes went wide. "Prue! Prue!" She threw herself against the bars, reaching through them with desperate hands. Prue ran to her, grabbed those hands, held on like she'd never let go. "I came back," she sobbed. "I told you I'd come back. I told you." "Well, ain't this touching?" The voice came from behind them. Josiah spun, reaching for his rifle. Too slow. Deputy Sloan stepped out of the shadows, a pistol leveled at Josiah's chest. Behind him, 3 more men with guns. "Josiah Thornton," Sloan drawled. "The broken man himself. Judge Ashworth said you might show up." He grinned, showing yellow teeth. "Didn't think you had the guts." Josiah's hand stopped halfway to his weapon. "Let the children go." "Now why would I do that?" Sloan circled slowly, keeping the gun trained. "Do you have any idea how much money those brats are worth? Railroad companies pay top dollar for workers who don't complain. Don't need feeding much. Don't run away because they've got nowhere to run to. They're children. They're orphans. Nobody wanted them anyway." Sloan's grin widened. "Hell, we're doing them a favor, giving them purpose, a reason to exist." In the cages, the children had gone silent, watching, waiting. "Here's what's going to happen," Sloan continued. "You're going to put down that rifle nice and slow. Then you and the little she-devil over there are going to join your new friends in the cages. The judge will decide what to do with you in the morning." Josiah didn't move. "Don't be stupid, Thornton. You're outnumbered and outgunned. No one's coming to save you." A distant explosion rocked the tunnel. Dust rained from the ceiling. Shouts erupted from somewhere deeper in the mine. Sloan's head whipped toward the sound. "What the hell?" Josiah moved. He tackled the deputy low, driving him into the stone floor. The pistol went off, the shot wild, ricocheting off the walls. Josiah's fist connected with Sloan's jaw once, twice, 3 times. "Prue, the keys." She was already moving. Grabbed the ring from Sloan's belt while Josiah held him down. Started unlocking cages with shaking hands. The other men rushed forward. Josiah rose to meet them, his rifle finally in his hands. The first shot took the closest man in the shoulder. The second went wide as Josiah dove behind a support beam. "Run!" he shouted at the children. "Follow Prue, go!" They ran. 8 small bodies streaming past him toward the ventilation shaft. Prue led the way, Grace clutched against her chest, guiding them through the darkness. A bullet grazed Josiah's arm. He hissed, returned fire, dropped another man. But there were too many. More footsteps pounding down the tunnel. More voices shouting. He was going to die here. The thought hit him with surprising clarity. He was going to die in this mine, surrounded by men who sold children like livestock. And somehow that felt right. He'd gotten Prue to Grace. He'd set the children free. Emma would be proud. "Come on, then," he roared at the approaching shadows. "Come get me." He raised his rifle, ready to take as many as he could with him. And then a voice rang through the tunnel, calm and commanding. "Federal marshals, drop your weapons." Josiah's heart stopped. From the main tunnel entrance, men in uniforms poured in. Blue coats, official badges, rifles at the ready. The mine guards froze. Sloan, bloody and dazed on the ground, tried to crawl away. "Nobody moves." The lead marshal stepped forward. "By order of the territorial governor, you're all under arrest." Behind the marshals, Clara appeared, her medical bag in one hand, relief flooding her face. "The distraction worked," she called to Josiah. "Gray Elk's message reached them. They've been riding all night." Josiah lowered his rifle slowly. It was over. But even as the marshals secured the prisoners, even as the children were led to safety, Josiah knew the real battle was just beginning. Judge Ashworth was still out there, still in power, still untouchable. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. And whatever came next, Josiah Thornton would be ready. He found Prue outside the mine entrance, Grace still wrapped in her arms. Both girls were crying, but they were together, alive, safe. "Mr. Thornton." Prue looked up at him with those two old eyes. "You came back. I promised I would." Grace peered at him over her sister's shoulder. Blonde hair tangled, blue eyes red from crying, but alive. So very alive. "Are you the man who saved us?" she whispered. Josiah knelt in the snow, eye level with the little girl who'd been singing hymns in the darkness. "Your sister saved you," he said. "I just helped." Grace studied him for a long moment. Then she reached out with one small hand and touched his face. "You're sad," she said. "I can tell. You lost somebody, didn't you?" Josiah's throat closed. "Yeah," he managed. "Yeah, I did." "So did we." Grace's voice was soft. "But Mama always said the people we love don't really leave us. They just wait. In a place we can't see yet. Until we're ready to see them again." The ribbon in his pocket felt warm against his heart. "Your mama was a wise woman," Josiah said. "She was the wisest." Grace looked at Prue, then back at Josiah. "Will you be our friend? We don't have many friends." Josiah looked at these two sisters, orphans, survivors, children who had lost everything and still found the courage to hope. "I'll be more than your friend," he heard himself say. "If you'll have me." Prue's arms tightened around Grace. Her eyes found Josiah's. "You mean that I keep my promises?" The snow fell soft and silent around them. In the distance, marshals led prisoners away in chains. Clara was tending to the rescued children. Gray Elk stood watch over it all, his face peaceful for the first time in years. And Josiah Thornton, the broken man of Wheeler County, felt something shift in his chest. Not healing. Not yet. But the beginning of it. The first crack of light in 3 years of darkness. The ride back to Wheeler County took 2 days. 2 days of silence from Judge Ashworth's supporters. 2 days of whispered rumors spreading through every town they passed. 2 days of children clinging to each other in the wagon Clara had commandeered, too afraid to believe they were really free. Josiah rode at the front, his rifle across his saddle, his eyes scanning every ridge and tree line. The marshals had arrested Sloan and his men, but Ashworth was still out there, still dangerous. And men like him didn't go down without a fight. "You're thinking too loud." Clara pulled her horse alongside his. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, but she hadn't complained once. Someone has to. The marshals have it under control. They've already sent word to the territorial governor. Ashworth's finished. Is he? Josiah shook his head. Men like that don't finish easy. He's got money connections leverage. Half the town owes him favors. The other half knows what he's done now. Clara's voice softened. The children are talking, Josiah, telling their stories. By the time we reach Wheeler County, everyone will know the truth. Truth doesn't always win. No, but sometimes it does. She reached over, touched his arm. You did a good thing. Whatever happens next, remember that. He looked at her. This woman who'd risked everything to help strangers. Who'd walked away from her safe little clinic to march into darkness with a broken man and a desperate child. Why'd you come? He asked. Really? You could have stayed out of it, stayed safe. Clara was quiet for a moment. Her eyes found the wagon behind them, where Prue sat with Grace in her lap, both sisters finally sleeping. I had a daughter once, she said quietly. Before I came west. She was 3 when the fever took her. Her father blamed me, said I should have done more, should have been a better doctor. Josiah's chest tightened. I'm sorry. He left, couldn't stand to look at me anymore. I came out here to escape the memories. Clara's voice cracked. But you can't escape grief, can you? It follows you, waits in the quiet moments, whispers your failures while you're trying to sleep. No, Josiah said. You can't escape it. When that girl walked into my clinic bleeding and desperate, Clara shook her head. I saw my daughter in her eyes, saw every child I couldn't save, and I thought maybe this time I could make it right. You did. Did I? She looked at him with wet eyes. Or did you? Before he could answer, a shout came from behind them. One of the marshals riding hard from the rear. Mr. Thornton, we've got company. Josiah wheeled his horse around. His hand went to his rifle. 3 riders were approaching from the west, fast, too fast for a friendly visit. Get the children down, Josiah shouted. Clara behind the wagon. But as the riders drew closer, Josiah recognized the lead horse, a black stallion with a white blaze. Marshal Crawford's mount. He lowered his rifle. Crawford pulled up hard, his horse dancing with nervous energy. His face was grim. Thornton, we've got a problem. What kind? Ashworth kind. Crawford caught his breath. The judge got wind of what happened at the mines. He's holed up in his mansion with a dozen armed men. Says he'll burn the whole place down before he lets us take him. Josiah's jaw tightened. Hostages. His wife, his servants, maybe others. Crawford shook his head. We've got the place surrounded, but he's threatening to start shooting if anyone approaches. Then what do you need me for? Crawford hesitated. His eyes flickered to Clara, to the wagon, back to Josiah. He's asking for you. What? Said he'll only negotiate with Josiah Thornton, nobody else. Crawford's voice dropped. I don't like it either, but right now he's got innocent people in there. We need to end this before someone gets killed. Josiah looked at the wagon, at Prue, who had woken and was watching him with those 2 old eyes, at Grace, still sleeping in her sister's arms. He'd promised them safety, promised them a future, but Ashworth would never stop. As long as he was free, he'd find a way to rebuild his operation, find new deputies to do his dirty work, take more children. I'll go. Josiah. Clara grabbed his arm. This is a trap, you know that. Probably. Then why? Because if I don't, he'll kill those people. Josiah covered her hand with his, and because some things have to end. Then I'm coming with you. No. Don't you dare. Clara. His voice softened. If something happens to me, those girls will need someone. You understand? They've already lost too much. Don't make them lose anything else. Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. Josiah turned to Crawford. "Let's go." They rode hard through the dying afternoon. The Ashworth mansion sat on a hill outside town, surrounded by manicured grounds that looked obscene against the wild Wyoming landscape. As they approached, Josiah counted the men posted at windows and doorways. A dozen, like Crawford had said. Maybe more. "That's far enough." A man stepped onto the front porch. Young, nervous, holding a rifle, like he wasn't sure which end was dangerous. "I'm Josiah Thornton." Josiah called back. "The judge asked for me." The man disappeared inside. A long moment passed. Then the door opened again, and Cornelius Ashworth stepped out. He looked different than Josiah remembered. The silver hair was disheveled, the fine suit was rumpled, but those eyes were the same cold, calculating, utterly without conscience. "Josiah," Ashworth smiled. "So good of you to come." "Let the hostages go, Cornelius." "Hostages? My dear man, these are my guests, my loyal staff, my beloved wife." Ashworth spread his hands. "They're here because they choose to be. Then let them walk out that door. If they stay willingly, they'll come back." Ashworth's smile faltered. "I'm not a fool, Josiah. The moment I release them, your marshals will storm the building. And if you don't, they'll storm it anyway." Josiah dismounted slowly, keeping his hands visible. "This is over, Cornelius. The children are safe. Sloan is in custody. The governor knows everything." "Everything?" Ashworth laughed. "They know what you've told them. A few names, a few transactions. But the real operation, the network, the buyers." He shook his head. "That information dies with me." "Fine by me." "Is it?" Ashworth stepped closer. "You know what I've spent the last 20 years building, Josiah, an empire. Not just here, across 3 territories. Mining operations, railroad contracts, orphanage placements. Thousands of children. Millions of dollars." Josiah felt sick. "You can't stop it by killing me," Ashworth continued. "There are others, partners, associates, men in positions of power who've been very well compensated to look the other way. Names. I'm sorry. Give me names." Josiah's voice hardened. "Write it all down. Every partner, every associate, every dirty lawman and politician. Do that and I'll make sure the court goes easy on you." Ashworth stared at him. Then he laughed. "You actually think I'd betray my partners to save myself? My dear boy, these men would have me killed within a week." "Better than hanging." "Is it?" Ashworth's eyes glittered. "At least in prison there's a chance of escape. A chance of reconsideration. But dead men don't negotiate." "Then what do you want?" Ashworth smiled. That same smile he'd worn at Emma's funeral. "I want what I've always wanted, Josiah. To win." He pulled a pistol from behind his back. "And since I can't win by living, I'll win by making sure everyone loses." Josiah dove to the side as the gun went off. The bullet missed his head by inches. He rolled, came up with his own pistol drawn. But Ashworth wasn't aiming at him anymore. He was aiming at the window, at the figures behind the glass. "No!" Josiah fired. His shot took Ashworth in the shoulder, spun him around. The judge's pistol discharged into the air. Chaos erupted. The armed men in the house started shooting. The marshals returned fire. Josiah ran for the porch, tackled Ashworth to the ground. They struggled. Despite his wound, Ashworth was strong, desperate. His hands closed around Josiah's throat. "You ruined everything," Ashworth hissed. "Everything I built. Everything I worked for. You built it on children's bones. I built it on necessity." Ashworth's grip tightened. "Those orphans had nothing, no future, no hope. I gave them purpose." Josiah's vision started to blur. His lungs screamed for air. "You gave them slavery. I gave them meaning." Josiah's hand found his father's knife at his belt. He pulled it free, pressed it against Ashworth's throat. "Let go." Ashworth froze. I said let go. Slowly the judge released his grip. Josiah gulped air, kept the knife steady. You should kill me, Ashworth whispered. We both know you want to. I do. Then why don't you? Josiah thought about Emma, about her small voice asking him what he wanted to become. Be good, Papa. That's all I ever wanted. Because I made a promise, he said, to someone better than either of us. He pulled back the knife and slammed the handle into Ashworth's temple. The judge went limp. The shooting had stopped. Marshals were swarming the building. Josiah looked up to see Crawford standing over him. You all right? I'll live. Josiah accepted the marshal's hand, pulled himself to his feet. The hostages. Safe. Couple injuries, nothing serious. Crawford looked down at Ashworth's unconscious form. What about him? He'll live too, unfortunately. The governor will be pleased. He wants Ashworth alive to testify. Josiah felt something release in his chest, a tension he'd been carrying for days, for years maybe. It's really over. The judge is done. The network will take longer to dismantle, but we've got to start. Crawford clapped him on the shoulder. You did good, Thornton. Real good. Josiah didn't answer. He just stood there looking at the man who had stolen children and sold them like cattle, and wondered why victory felt so hollow. Then he remembered. Clara. The children. Home. He had somewhere to be. Marshal. Josiah tipped his hat. I believe I have a family waiting for me. The ranch looked different when they finally arrived. Not the buildings themselves. Those were the same weathered wood and sturdy stone. But something in the air had changed. The oppressive silence that had hung over the place for 3 years had lifted, replaced by something lighter, warmer. Rosa stood on the porch as they rode up her rosary in her hands, tears streaming down her face. Gracias a Dios, she whispered. You came back. Josiah dismounted slowly. His body ached. His throat still burned where Ashworth's fingers had dug in. But he smiled. Told you I would. Rosa threw her arms around him, held on like she was afraid he might disappear. The whole town is talking, she said into his shoulder. They say you saved those children. They say you brought down the judge. I had help. Rosa pulled back, noticed Clara for the first time. Her eyes narrowed, then softened. So I see. A knowing smile crossed her weathered face. You'll be wanting dinner then, all of you. Rosa. No argument, senor. You're all half-starved and frozen through. She turned to the wagon where Prue was helping Grace climb down. And you niñas, inside. Hot food and warm beds. Grace looked at Josiah with wide eyes. This is your house. It is. It's big. Bigger than it needs to be for one man. He knelt in front of her eye to eye. But maybe not too big for a family. Grace glanced at Prue, then back at Josiah. Are we going to live here? If you want. Forever. Josiah thought about the room at the end of the hall. Emma's room. The room he hadn't been able to change for 3 years. Forever's a long time, he said. How about we start with tonight? Grace threw her arms around his neck, held on tight. I'd like that, she whispered. Over her shoulder, Josiah saw Prue watching them. Her expression was guarded, hopeful, but afraid to hope too hard. He knew that feeling well. Come on, he said, standing with Grace still in his arms. Let's get inside before we all freeze. Dinner was chaos. Good chaos. The kind Josiah had forgotten existed. Rosa had somehow conjured a feast from nothing: beef stew, fresh bread, apple pie that made Grace's eyes go round as saucers. The dining room table that had stood empty for so long was suddenly full. Clara and Gray Elk sat across from each other, arguing good-naturedly about the best way to treat frostbite. Prue perched on the edge of her chair, eating like she still couldn't quite believe the food wouldn't be snatched away. Grace sat in Josiah's lap, too tired to hold her own spoon, letting him feed her bites of pie. Rosa bustled back and forth, refilling plates, fussing over everyone equally. More stew, Senora. Clara held up her hands. I couldn't eat another bite. Nonsense. You're too thin. Rosa ladled more into her bowl anyway. A doctor should know better. How can you heal others if you don't take care of yourself? She has a point, Josiah said. Clara shot him a look. Don't you start. Wouldn't dream of it. Senor Thornton. Rosa's voice went soft. There's something you should know. The table went quiet. Everyone felt the shift. While you were gone, a man came from town. A lawyer. Rosa wrung her hands. He said the judge's estate is being seized. All of it. And the territorial governor wants to use some of the money to help the children who were hurt. That's good, Clara said. Those children will need support for years. Yes, but Rosa looked at Josiah. The lawyer said they need someone to oversee it. Someone the children trust. Someone who... No. Senor? I'm not a committee man, Rosa. I'm not a politician. I'm just a rancher who got lucky. You're more than that. Gray Elk's voice cut through the room, calm and certain. You walked into darkness to save children you'd never met. That takes more than luck. The old man's right, Clara said quietly. Those children need someone who understands what they've been through. Someone who won't let the system fail them again. Josiah looked around the table. At Gray Elk, whose grandson had died in a Colorado mine. At Clara, who'd lost her daughter and her marriage to grief. At Prue and Grace orphans, who'd nearly been sold into slavery. At Rosa, who'd stayed with him through 3 years of silence and whiskey and talking to ghosts. I'll think about it, he said finally. Rosa beamed. That's all I ask. Grace tugged at his sleeve. Mr. Thornton. Yeah, sweetheart? If we're going to live here, do I have to call you Mr. Thornton? She yawned. It's a lot of words. Josiah's heart clenched. What do you want to call me? Grace looked at Prue. Her sister nodded slowly. Can I call you Papa? Grace whispered. I know you're not really, but I miss having a papa. The room went dead silent. Josiah couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. 3 years of grief pressed against his chest like a physical weight. He thought about Emma, about the ribbon in his pocket, about all the nights he'd sat in her room talking to her ghost, wishing he could hear her voice one more time. Be good, Papa. Yeah, he heard himself say. Yeah, you can call me that. Grace smiled. Then her eyes drifted closed, and she was asleep against his chest within seconds. Prue watched him across the table. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. You mean it? This isn't just... You're not going to change your mind. I keep my promises. But we're strangers. We're orphans. We're your family. Josiah's voice cracked. If you'll have me. Prue stood up, walked around the table, and for the first time she hugged him without being hugged first. I'll have you, she whispered. Papa. Later that night, after the children were in bed, and Gray Elk had ridden home, and Rosa had finally stopped fussing, Josiah found Clara on the front porch. She stood at the railing, looking out at the mountains. The snow had stopped. The sky was clear for the first time in days, scattered with more stars than any man could count. Can't sleep, he asked. Too much to think about. She didn't turn around. I should head back to the clinic tomorrow. There are patients who need me. You could stay. Clara went still. The ranch has a guest house, Josiah continued. Been empty for years. It's small, but you could set up a practice there. Plenty of folks around here who can't afford the doctor in town. Josiah. I'm not asking for anything. He moved to stand beside her. I'm just saying. You don't have to go back to being alone. None of us do. Clara was quiet for a long moment. My husband told me I was cursed, she said finally. That everywhere I went, death followed. That I should stay away from children because I'd only bring them grief. Your husband was a fool. Maybe. Clara turned to face him. But what if he was right? What if I stay and something happens to those girls? Something might happen anyway. Josiah took her hands in his. The world's not safe, Clara. Never has been. But that doesn't mean we stop trying. Doesn't mean we give up on each other. Is that what we're doing? Not giving up on each other? I don't know what we're doing. He squeezed her hands. I just know I don't want you to leave. Clara looked at him. Really looked the way she had in the cave when she'd told him to come back. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too. I don't know how to be part of a family anymore. Neither do I. He almost smiled. We can figure it out together. Clara laughed. A real laugh, surprised and bright. You're terrible at this, she said. Terrible at what? Convincing a woman to stay. Is it working? She looked at him for a long moment. Then she rose on her toes and kissed his cheek. Ask me again in the morning, she whispered, when I haven't been awake for 2 days. Is that a yes? It's a maybe. But she was smiling. Good night, Josiah. She went inside, leaving him alone on the porch. Josiah stood there for a while, looking at the stars, feeling something warm spreading through his chest. Not quite happiness. Not yet. But close. He pulled Emma's ribbon from his pocket, held it up to the starlight. I think I'm going to be okay, baby girl, he said softly. I think maybe you sent them to me. All of them. Prue and Grace and Clara. Maybe this was your plan all along. The wind stirred, gentle, warm despite the winter cold. Josiah closed his eyes. I love you, Emma. I'll always love you. But I think it's time I started living again. He pressed the ribbon to his heart one last time. Then he went inside to the house that finally felt like a home. The next morning brought a visitor. Josiah was in the barn mucking out stalls when Rosa came running. Senor, come quick! He dropped the pitchfork, grabbed his rifle, sprinted for the house. On the front porch, a woman stood alone. Mid-50s silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing a traveling dress that had seen better days. Margaret Ashworth, the judge's wife. Josiah's hand tightened on the rifle. Mrs. Ashworth. Mr. Thornton. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. I know I'm the last person you want to see. You're right about that. Please. She took a step forward. I need to speak with you. It's about the children. What about them? I know where the others are. Josiah went still. What others? Margaret Ashworth's eyes filled with tears. The ones Cornelius sent away. Over the years. I kept records. Her voice broke. Addresses. Names. Families who took them. I know where they all went. Why are you telling me this? Because my husband is a monster. The words came out raw ugly. And I spent 20 years pretending I didn't see it. Pretending the children who disappeared had just been placed with families back east. Pretending the money we lived on wasn't soaked in blood. She pulled a leather journal from her bag, held it out with shaking hands. This is everything. Every child. Every transaction. Every buyer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I'm giving it to you because you're the only person I trust to do something with it. Josiah stared at the journal, at the woman who'd been married to a monster for 2 decades. How do I know this isn't a trap? You don't. Margaret lifted her chin. But I spent my whole life being a coward, standing by while my husband hurt people, telling myself there was nothing I could do. She pressed the journal into his hands. I'm done being a coward, Mr. Thornton. Even if you don't believe me, even if you throw me out and burn this journal, at least I'll know I tried. Josiah looked at her for a long moment. Then he stepped aside. Come inside, Mrs. Ashworth. I think we have a lot to talk about. Margaret Ashworth sobbed with relief, and Josiah Thornton realized the fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. Margaret Ashworth's hands shook as she opened the journal on Josiah's dining room table. "I started keeping records 10 years ago," she said. "At first I told myself it was just bookkeeping. Cornelius was always so disorganized with finances. Someone had to keep track." Josiah stared at the pages. Names, dates, amounts, children reduced to numbers in neat columns. "You knew," he said flatly. "This whole time." "I suspected." Margaret's voice cracked. "Suspecting and knowing are different things." "Not different enough." Clara moved to stand beside Josiah, her eyes scanning the entries. Her face went pale. "There are hundreds of names here." 347, Margaret whispered. "Over 15 years. Some went to mining operations, some to railroad gangs. The youngest ones—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "The youngest ones went to wealthy families who wanted children but couldn't have them, or didn't want to wait for legal adoption. They bought children. They bought perfect families. No questions asked. No paperwork to trace." Margaret looked at Josiah with haunted eyes. "Those children might still be alive, still living with people who paid for them like livestock." Prue appeared in the doorway. She'd been listening. "How do we find them?" "Prue," Josiah started. "No." The girl stepped into the room. "If there are other kids like me and Grace out there, we have to find them. We have to bring them home." "Home to what?" Margaret's voice was bitter. "Most of these children were orphans. They have no families left." "Then we make them a family." Prue's jaw set, like Mr. Thornton did for us. Silence filled the room. Josiah looked at the journal, at the names of children stolen and sold, at 15 years of evil recorded in careful handwriting. "Where do we start?" Margaret turned to a specific page. Her finger traced an entry dated 2 months ago. "Here, a boy named Thomas, 8 years old, sold to a man named Whitmore in Colorado. The transaction was recent enough that he might still be in the same location. How far? 3 days' ride, maybe 4 in winter." Clara shook her head. "Josiah, you just got back. You need to rest. Heal." "I'll rest when those children are safe." "You can't save everyone." "Maybe not." He met her eyes. "But I can try." The door opened. Gray Elk stepped inside, snow dusting his shoulders. "I heard there was a visitor." His dark eyes found Margaret, narrowed. "The judge's wife." "She brought us information," Josiah said. "Names, locations, children who might still be saved." "And you trust her?" "I don't trust anyone." Josiah picked up the journal. "But I trust what's written here. These are real names, real places. We can verify." Gray Elk studied Margaret for a long moment. She met his gaze without flinching. "My husband destroyed many lives," she said quietly, "including my own. I can't undo what he did. But I can help find the children he scattered across the territory." "Why now? Why not years ago?" "Because I was afraid." Margaret's voice broke. "Because I was a coward. Because I told myself it wasn't my fault, that I didn't have a choice, that there was nothing I could do." She wiped her eyes. "I was wrong. There's always a choice. I'm making mine now." Gray Elk was silent. Then he nodded slowly. "The spirits speak of a journey," he said. "Many paths, many dangers. But at the end, healing. Is that a yes?" "It's a warning." Gray Elk looked at Josiah. "You cannot do this alone. The men who bought these children will not surrender them willingly. Some are powerful, connected, protected. I've faced powerful men before. And nearly died." Clara's voice was sharp. "Josiah, think about this. You have 2 little girls who need you. You can't keep throwing yourself into danger." "She's right." Prue stepped forward, her face serious. "We need you here, Papa." The word hit Josiah like a fist. Papa. She'd called him Papa. "I know," he said softly. "But there are other children who need me too. Other Prues and Graces out there scared and alone waiting for someone to come." "Then let someone else go." "Who?" Silence. "That's what I thought." Josiah knelt in front of Prue. "I'm not abandoning you. I'm not disappearing. But I have to do this. You understand, don't you? You're the one who taught me." "Taught you what?" "That when somebody needs help, you don't wait for someone else to do it. You go, even when it's dangerous, even when you're scared." He touched her cheek. "You walked into a saloon full of strangers to save your sister. I can ride to Colorado to save a boy I've never met." Prue's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "Promise me you'll come back." "I promise." "On Emma's memory." Josiah's throat tightened. "On Emma's memory." Prue threw her arms around his neck. "Then go. Save them. But if you die out there, I'm going to be really mad at you." Despite everything, Josiah laughed. Noted. They left at dawn the next morning. Josiah rode in front. Clara had insisted on coming despite his protests. Gray Elk followed silent, as always. And to everyone's surprise, Margaret Ashworth sat astride a borrowed horse the journal secured in her saddlebag. "You don't have to do this," Josiah had told her. "Yes, I do. These people know my husband. Some of them will only talk to me." Margaret's jaw set. "Besides, I've spent 20 years looking the other way. It's time I looked forward instead." The first 3 days passed without incident. They rode hard, slept, little spoke less. The trail wound through mountain passes, still heavy with snow, across frozen rivers, past abandoned homesteads where no smoke rose from chimneys. On the fourth morning they reached the Whitmore Ranch. It wasn't much to look at. A modest house, a sagging barn, a handful of cattle in a pen. Nothing that suggested wealth or power. "This is it?" Clara asked. Margaret checked the journal. "According to my records, yes, Henry Whitmore, paid $500 for a healthy boy to help with the ranch work." "Slave labor," Josiah muttered. "Essentially." They approached slowly. Josiah's hand rested on his rifle. "Hello, the house," he called out. No response. "Hello, anyone home?" The door opened. A man stepped out, maybe 50, with a weathered face and suspicious eyes. A shotgun hung loose in his hands. "Who's asking?" "Name's Josiah Thornton. I'm looking for a boy named Thomas." Whitmore's grip tightened on the shotgun. "Don't know anyone by that name." "I think you do." Josiah kept his voice calm. "I think you bought him from Judge Cornelius Ashworth about 2 months back. Paid $500 for a child to work your land." "That's a damn lie." "Is it?" Margaret rode forward. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm Margaret Ashworth. My husband kept detailed records of every transaction. Your name is in his ledger." Whitmore's face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The territorial authorities are investigating my husband's operation," Margaret continued. "Everyone involved will be prosecuted, unless they cooperate." "Cooperate how?" "Return the children. Testify against the network." She paused. "Help us bring down the men who sold you that boy in the first place." Whitmore's eyes darted between them. His hands trembled on the shotgun. "I didn't know," he said. "They told me he was an orphan, that I was giving him a home." "Then give him back." "I can't." Josiah's blood went cold. "Why not?" "Because he ran." Whitmore lowered the shotgun, suddenly looking much older. 3 weeks ago. I woke up and he was gone. Took some food, a blanket, my second best horse. Where would he go? How should I know? Kid never talked, never smiled, just worked and stared at me with those eyes. Whitmore shuddered. Like I was the devil himself. You were, Josiah said quietly. I was trying to help him. You bought a human being, Mr. Whitmore. Whatever you told yourself, that's what you did. Whitmore had no answer for that. They searched the property, found the shed where Thomas had slept, a dirt floor, a thin blanket, no heat. Found the marks on the wall where he'd counted the days. 63 scratches, 63 days of captivity. He couldn't have gone far. Clara knelt by the shed, examining tracks mostly buried by snow. Not in this weather, not on horseback. Unless someone found him, Gray Elk said. Helped him, hid him. Who would do that? Someone who understood what he was running from. Gray Elk stood, his eyes distant. There are people in these mountains who take in lost children. People who remember what it was like to be hunted. Your people. Some. Others too. The territory is full of refugees, Mr. Thornton. People running from one kind of darkness or another. Gray Elk mounted his horse. I know someone who might be able to help, but it will cost us a day. A day we don't have. A day that might save that boy's life. Gray Elk looked at him steadily. Trust me. Josiah thought about Prue, about Grace, about a promise made in blood and snow. Lead the way. Gray Elk's contact lived in a hidden valley accessible only through a narrow pass that would have been invisible to anyone who didn't know it was there. Her name was Sarah Crow Feather, half Lakota, half Irish, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to look straight through to your soul. Gray Elk, she greeted the old man with the embrace. It's been too long. Too long, he agreed. I need your help, old friend. You always do. Sarah's sharp gaze swept over the group, stopped on Josiah. This is the one, the rancher who raided the mines. Word travels fast. Word travels as fast as children's whispers. Sarah's expression softened. You did a good thing, Mr. Thornton. Those children speak your name like a prayer. I didn't do it alone. No one ever does. Sarah turned to Clara. You're the doctor, the one who gave up everything to help. Clara blinked. I didn't give up. Your practice, your safety, your carefully constructed walls. Sarah almost smiled. You gave up more than you know. Before Clara could respond, Sarah turned back to Gray Elk. You're looking for a boy, about 8 years old, arrived 3 weeks ago on a stolen horse, half frozen, and refusing to speak. Josiah's heart leaped. You have him? I have him. Sarah's voice hardened. The question is, what do you intend to do with him? Take him home. Home to where he has no family, no parents, no one waiting. He has us. Josiah stepped forward. He has a ranch with more room than it needs, and a housekeeper who'll fuss over him and 2 girls who know exactly what he's been through. Sarah studied him for a long moment. The boy doesn't trust strangers. Neither do I. He's been hurt. Badly. The man who bought him. I know what Whitmore did. Do you? Sarah's eyes flashed. Do you know that he made the boy sleep in a shed while the cattle slept in a barn? That he fed him scraps? That he beat him when he worked too slowly and beat him again when he tried to run? Josiah's jaw tightened. No, I didn't know that. Thomas has learned that adults are not to be trusted. That kindness is just a trap. That the only person who will protect him is himself. Sarah crossed her arms. How do you intend to convince him otherwise? I don't know. Sarah raised an eyebrow. That's your answer. It's the only honest one. Josiah met her gaze. I don't know how to fix what's been done to that boy. I don't know if I can earn his trust or heal his wounds or give him anything close to a normal life. But I know I'm going to try. Because someone tried for me, and it saved my life. Who? A 9-year-old girl who walked into a saloon and demanded that a broken man stop feeling sorry for himself and start helping. Sarah was silent. Then, slowly, she smiled. Follow me. Thomas was smaller than Josiah expected. Thin with dark hair and eyes that held too much knowledge for a child his age. He sat in the corner of Sarah's cabin, wrapped in a blanket, watching them enter, like a cornered animal. "Thomas," Sarah's voice was gentle. "These people want to talk to you." The boy said nothing, his eyes fixed on Josiah, wary and afraid. Josiah lowered himself to the ground, putting himself at the boy's level, not approaching, just sitting. "Hey there," he said quietly. "My name's Josiah." Nothing. "I had a daughter once. Her name was Emma. She was about your age when she died." Thomas blinked, the first reaction Josiah had seen. "After she was gone, I didn't want to talk to anyone either. Didn't want to trust anyone. Figured if I just kept my walls high enough, nothing could hurt me again." Silence. "But then a girl came along. Her name's Prue. She lost her parents too. Lost everything except her little sister Grace. And some bad men took Grace away." Thomas's hands tightened on the blanket. Prue could have given up, could have decided the world was too cruel to fight. But she didn't. She found me instead. Made me help her. Made me care about something again. Josiah leaned forward slightly. "We got Grace back, and then we found other children who'd been taken. And now I'm here looking for you because Prue said something that stuck with me." "What?" The word came out rough, barely audible. Josiah almost smiled. "Progress. She said if there are other kids like her out there, we have to find them. Bring them home." He paused. "Even if home is just a bunch of broken people trying to take care of each other." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. His eyes searched Josiah's face, looking for the lie, the trap, the cruelty that always came eventually. "I don't trust you," he said finally. "That's fair. I haven't earned it yet. I don't want to go with you. Also fair. You don't know me." "Then why should I?" Josiah thought about it. Really thought. "Because I know what it's like to be alone," he said. "To feel like nobody in the whole world gives a damn whether you live or die. And I know that even when you feel that way, it doesn't have to be true." He held out his hand, palm up. "I can't promise you'll be happy. Can't promise nothing bad will ever happen again. But I can promise you won't be alone anymore." Thomas stared at his hand. The cabin was silent. Everyone held their breath. Then slowly the boy reached out and took it. "Okay," he whispered. "I'll try." The journey back took 5 days. Thomas didn't speak much at first. He rode beside Gray Elk, who seemed content to travel in silence, offering the boy the space he needed without making him feel abandoned. Clara kept watch over his physical condition. The boy was malnourished, frostbitten in places, carrying wounds that would need time to heal. "He'll recover," she told Josiah one night by the fire. "The body at least. The mind. That takes longer." "I know." "Do you—" Clara's voice was gentle. "Josiah, you're taking on a lot. Prue and Grace, now Thomas. Eventually, maybe others. Are you saying I shouldn't?" "I'm saying you need help." She moved closer to him. "You can't do this alone. No one can." "I'm not alone. I have Rosa, Gray Elk, and... Josiah looked at her. The firelight caught her features, softening them. "And you. If you're willing." Clara was quiet for a long moment. "I told you to ask me in the morning. It's been several mornings. And I've been thinking." "What conclusion did you reach?" Clara smiled, just slightly. "I concluded that I'm tired of being alone too." She took his hand. "I concluded that there's a ranch in Wyoming that could use a doctor, and a kitchen table that looks better with more people around it. And the rancher himself." "The rancher?" Clara squeezed his hand. "The rancher is a stubborn, reckless fool who keeps almost getting himself killed." "Sounds like trouble." "The worst kind." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "But I've never been good at avoiding trouble." Josiah wrapped his arm around her, felt her warmth against the cold. "Stay," he said. Not as a guest, not as help. Stay because you want to be there. Is that a proposal? It's an invitation. He paused. The proposal can come later, when we're not sitting in the snow with a traumatized child and a dozen more to find. Clara laughed softly. I'll hold you to that. I hope you do. They reached the ranch just before sunset on the 5th day. Rosa burst out of the house before they'd even dismounted. Senor, you're home. Told you I would be. Prue and Grace came running behind her. They skidded to a stop when they saw Thomas. Who's that? Grace asked. His name's Thomas. Josiah lifted the boy down from the horse. He's going to be staying with us for a while. Thomas stood rigid, his eyes darting between the two girls. Prue stepped forward, studied him with that too old gaze. You were in the mines, she said. Not a question. Thomas nodded slowly. Me and Grace, too. For a little while. Prue held out her hand the same way Josiah had done. I'm Prue. This is my sister Grace. Rosa makes really good food, and there's a room with a soft bed and nobody here is going to hurt you. Thomas stared at her hand. Promise, he whispered. Promise. He took her hand, and for the first time since they'd found him, Thomas almost smiled. Later that night, after the children were fed and bathed and put to bed, Thomas in the room next to the girls close enough to hear them. If he called out, Josiah sat on the porch with Margaret Ashworth. How many more? He asked. In the journal 347. Margaret's voice was heavy. But many will be impossible to find. Some were moved years ago. Some, she stopped. Some are dead. Yes. Josiah stared out at the darkness. Then we save the ones we can. You really mean to do this, track down every child in that ledger? I mean to try. Margaret was quiet for a moment. My husband destroyed hundreds of lives, Mr. Thornton. Even if you find every child, even if you bring them all home, it won't undo what he did. I know. Then why? Josiah thought about Emma, about her ribbon still in his pocket, about the promise he'd made to be good. Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply. And because those children deserve someone who'll fight for them. Even if it takes years. Even if it takes the rest of my life. Margaret studied him for a long moment. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out another journal. There's more, she said quietly. More names, more locations, records I kept separately in case Cornelius ever found the first journal. She handed it to him. It was thicker than the first. How many? Another 216 children, spanning 12 years. Josiah felt the weight of it in his hands. Over 500 children. 500 lives stolen and scattered across the territories. Why are you giving me this now? Because you just proved you meant what you said. Margaret stood pulling her coat tight. When I came here, I wasn't sure. I thought maybe you'd find one child, declare victory, and go back to your comfortable life. That was never going to happen. I know that now. She looked toward the house where candlelight glowed in the windows. You've built something here, Mr. Thornton. A family for children who have none. A home for the lost and broken. She paused. I'd like to help, if you'll let me. Help how? I know these people. The buyers, the brokers, the men who profited from my husband's operation. I can open doors you can't. Get information you couldn't. She met his eyes. And perhaps in some small way atone for what I failed to prevent. Josiah considered her for a long moment. Then he held out his hand. Welcome to the family, Mrs. Ashworth. Margaret took it. Her grip was firm. Call me Margaret. Mrs. Ashworth was the wife of a monster. She almost smiled. I'd like to be someone else now. Then Margaret it is. They shook on it there in the cold night air with the stars watching overhead and the weight of 500 children's fates resting on their shoulders. And somewhere in the house behind them, 3 orphaned children slept peacefully for the first time in months, dreaming of a future that finally seemed possible. The next morning, Josiah found Clara in the kitchen helping Rosa prepare breakfast. Thomas sat at the table watching them with cautious eyes. Prue was showing Grace how to set places, and the sound of their voices filled the room like music. "You're up early," Clara said without turning around. "Couldn't sleep." "Thinking about the journals. Thinking about everything." He moved to stand beside her. "I made a decision last night." "What kind of decision?" "The kind that changes things." He took her hands. "Clara, I know this is fast. I know we barely know each other. But I've spent 3 years learning that life doesn't wait for you to be ready." Clara's breath caught. "Josiah." "I'm not proposing, not yet. But I'm telling you that when this is over, when we've found as many of those children as we can, I'm going to." He squeezed her hands. "I'm telling you so you have time to think about what your answer will be." Clara looked at him. Her eyes were bright. "And if my answer is yes? Then we build something together. A home for children who need one. A family that keeps growing." He glanced at the kitchen at Rosa and the children. "Something worth living for." Clara was silent for a moment. Then she rose on her toes and kissed him. Not on the cheek this time, on the lips. "Ask me properly when the time comes," she whispered, "and I'll give you a proper answer." "Is that a yes?" "It's a promise." From the table, Grace giggled. "They're kissing." "Gross," Prue said, but she was smiling. Thomas watched them all with wide eyes. Something in his expression shifted. Just slightly, like a door cracking open for the first time. "Is it always like this here?" he asked quietly. Prue grinned at him. "Only on good days." "What about bad days?" "On bad days, Rosa makes extra pie." Rosa harumphed from the stove. "I make extra pie because you eat like wolves, not because of bad days." "Same thing," Prue said. For the first time since they'd found him, Thomas laughed. It was small, uncertain, but it was real. And Josiah Thornton, standing in a kitchen full of people who'd found their way to each other through darkness and desperation, felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. Real hope. The kind that survives. 6 months had passed since Thomas came to the ranch. 6 months of early mornings and late nights. Of children arriving in ones and twos, scared and broken, and slowly learning to trust again. Of Clara setting up her clinic in the guest house, and Rosa expanding the dining table twice to fit everyone. The ranch had become something Josiah never imagined. Not just a home, but a haven. 17 children now lived there. 17 souls rescued from the pages of Margaret's ledgers. Some had been easy to find. Others had required weeks of searching negotiations with families who didn't want to let go of their investments. And in 2 cases, midnight rescues that left Josiah with fresh scars and Clara with gray hairs she blamed entirely on him. "You're going to get yourself killed," she told him every time he rode out. "Not today," he always answered. And somehow miraculously, he kept that promise. But the work wasn't finished. There were still names in those journals. Still children scattered across 3 territories, waiting for someone to remember they existed. Josiah was in the barn saddling his horse for yet another journey when Prue found him. "You're leaving again." "Just for a few days. Margaret found another lead. A girl named Sarah about your age. She's in Arizona territory. Take me with you." Josiah stopped, turned to face her. In 6 months, Prue had grown. Not just taller, though she had done that too. She held herself differently now. The desperate, wild-eyed child who'd burst into his life had become something else, someone else. A young woman who'd survived the unimaginable and come out the other side with her fire still burning. "Prue, I'm serious." She crossed her arms. "You keep going out there, risking your life, bringing back children who don't know what to expect. But I do. I know exactly what they've been through. I can help them trust you faster. It's dangerous. So was the mines. So was finding you. So was every single day of my life before I walked into that saloon." Prue stepped closer. You taught me that fear doesn't get to make the decisions, that we do what needs doing even when it's hard. I also taught you that staying alive matters. And I'm telling you, I can stay alive just fine. Her jaw set. Papa, I'm not asking permission, I'm telling you I'm coming. Josiah stared at her. This girl who had saved him as much as he'd saved her, who had looked at a broken man and seen something worth fighting for. Clara's going to kill me, he said finally. Prue grinned. She'll get over it. You're too much like me, you know that. I'll take that as a compliment. Josiah shook his head, but he was smiling. Fine, but you follow my lead. You do exactly what I say when I say it. No arguments. No arguments, Prue agreed. Then she paused. Unless you're being stupid. Prue, what someone has to keep you honest. Despite himself, Josiah laughed. For the first time in longer than he could remember, the sound came easy. Go pack, he said. We leave in an hour. Prue was already running for the house. The journey to Arizona Territory took 8 days. 8 days of riding through country that shifted from frozen mountains to red desert. 8 days of Prue, asking questions about everything, the plants, the rocks, the distant mesas that rose from the earth like ancient monuments. Did you and Emma ever travel like this? She asked one evening by the fire. Josiah felt the familiar ache in his chest. But it was different now. Softer somehow. Once, he said. We went to Denver when she was about Grace's age. She wanted to see the city. The big buildings, the fancy stores. He smiled at the memory. She spent the whole trip asking when we could go home. She didn't like it. She loved it. But she loved the ranch more. Said the city was too loud, too crowded. Too many people who didn't look you in the eye when they passed. Prue nodded slowly. I know what she means. The orphanage was like that. Everyone just going through the motions, not really seeing each other. That's why I keep doing this. Josiah gestured at the darkness around them. Riding out, finding children, bringing them back. Because every one of them deserves to be seen, to be known, to matter to someone. You really believe that? I didn't used to. He met her eyes. You taught me. Prue was quiet for a moment. Then she moved closer to him, leaned her head against his shoulder. I'm glad I found you, she said softly. Me too, kid. Me too. They found Sarah in a small town called Copper Springs. She was working in a laundry, her hands raw and red from lye, her eyes dead in the way Josiah had learned to recognize, the look of a child who had stopped expecting anything good. Sarah Miller. The girl flinched, dropped the sheet she'd been washing. Who's asking? My name's Josiah Thornton. This is my daughter Prue. The word came easily now, naturally. We're here to take you home. Sarah's eyes darted between them, calculating, suspicious. I don't have a home. You do now. Prue stepped forward. I know you don't believe that. I didn't believe it either when he first came for me, but it's true. What do you know about it? I know what it's like to be sold. Prue's voice was steady. I know what it's like to think nobody's coming for you, that you're going to spend the rest of your life working for people who don't see you as human. Sarah's mask cracked, just slightly. And then what? You get rescued and everything's fine. No. Then you get rescued and everything's hard in different ways. Prue held out her hand. But at least you're not alone anymore. Sarah stared at her hand. Her lips trembled. I don't know how to be part of a family, she whispered. Neither did I. Prue smiled. We can learn together. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Sarah took her hand. The owner of the laundry tried to stop them. A heavy-set man with mean eyes who claimed Sarah owed him 2 years of work to pay off her debt. What debt? Josiah asked calmly. Room and board. Training. I invested in this girl, and I'm not letting some stranger walk off with my property. She's not property. She is until she pays what she owes. Josiah reached into his coat, pulled out a piece of paper, and handed it to the man. "This is a warrant from the territorial governor," he said. "It grants me authority to remove any child found to be held in involuntary servitude." He paused. "Would you like to continue this conversation with the federal marshals, or would you prefer to let us go peacefully?" The man's face went red, then white. "This ain't over, Thornton." "Yes, it is." Josiah turned to Sarah. "Come on, we've got a long ride home." They were 3 days out from Copper Springs when the ambush hit. 6 men on horseback blocking the trail. Their leader was a man Josiah recognized one of the names from Margaret's journals. A broker named Harlan Vance, who'd made his fortune selling children to mining operations. Josiah Thornton. Vance smiled like a snake. "I've been wanting to meet you." "Can't say the feeling's mutual. You've been causing trouble for my associates, disrupting business, costing us money." Vance's smile widened. "That's going to stop now." Josiah's hand drifted toward his rifle. "You sure about that?" 6 against 1, I like those odds." 3, Prue said. She'd pulled her own pistol, holding it steady. "And I'm a better shot than I look." Sarah's eyes were wide, but she didn't run, didn't hide. She picked up a rock from the ground and held it like a weapon. Vance laughed. "Children with guns and rocks. This should be entertaining. Let us pass and nobody gets hurt." "I don't think so." Vance raised his hand, signaling his men. "See, you've made some powerful enemies, Thornton. Men who don't appreciate having their business interrupted. Men who've put a price on your head." "How much?" $5,000, dead or alive." Vance drew his pistol. "I prefer dead. Less complicated." Josiah moved before Vance could fire. He threw himself from his horse, rolled, came up shooting. His first shot took Vance in the shoulder. His second dropped the man next to him. "Prue, get Sarah out of here. I'm not leaving you." That wasn't a request. Prue grabbed Sarah's arm, kicked her horse into motion. They fled down the trail as gunfire erupted behind them. Josiah was outnumbered, and he knew it. 4 men still standing, all of them shooting. He ducked behind a boulder, felt bullets chip stone inches from his face. "Give it up, Thornton," Vance screamed. "You're dead either way." Josiah checked his ammunition. 3 shots left, 4 enemies. Not great odds. He thought about Clara, about the children waiting at home, about Emma's ribbon still in his pocket after all these months. "Be good, Papa." "Sorry, baby girl," he muttered. "Might have to break that promise today." He rose, ready to make his last stand. And then the world exploded into hoofbeats and gunfire. Gray Elk came out of nowhere, rifle blazing. Behind him rode Marshal Crawford and half a dozen deputies. "Federal marshals," Crawford bellowed. "Drop your weapons." Vance's men scattered. 2 went down before they got 10 feet. The others threw up their hands in surrender. Vance himself tried to run. Gray Elk cut him off his horse, blocking the trail. "Harlan Vance," Gray Elk said calmly. "I've waited a long time for this. Who the hell are you? My name wouldn't mean anything to you, but my grandson's might." Gray Elk's eyes went cold. "Samuel Running Bear. You sold him to a Colorado mining operation 15 years ago. He died there. He was 9 years old." Vance's face went white. I didn't." "Don't lie." Gray Elk's voice was quiet. "Deadly. I've seen the records. Your signature is on the transfer documents." He raised his rifle. "Gray Elk." Josiah's voice cut through the tension. "Don't. He deserves to die. Probably. But if you kill him, you become the monster. And Samuel deserves better than that." Gray Elk's hands trembled on the rifle. His eyes never left Vance's face. "My grandson called for me while he died," he said. "The miners told me. Said he cried for his grandfather every night until his lungs gave out. I'm sorry." "Don't." Gray Elk's voice cracked. "Don't you dare say you're sorry." Silence. Then slowly, Gray Elk lowered the rifle. "You're right," he said to Josiah. "Samuel deserves better." He turned to Crawford. "Take him. Let the law have what's left." Crawford moved forward, iron cuffs ready. "Harlan Vance, you're under arrest for trafficking in human beings, conspiracy to commit murder, and about 24 other charges I'll think of on the ride back." As they led Vance away, Gray Elk dismounted and walked to Josiah. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For reminding me who I want to be." Gray Elk put his hand on Josiah's shoulder. "Samuel would have liked you. He was always drawn to people with good hearts." "I'm not sure my heart's all that good." "It is." Gray Elk almost smiled. It just needed someone to remind it. They found Prue and Sarah a mile down the trail, both of them pale but unharmed. "You're alive." Prue threw herself at Josiah so hard she nearly knocked him over. "I heard the gunfire, and I thought, I'm okay." He held her tight. "I'm okay. Don't ever scare me like that again." "I'll try." "You better do more than try." She pulled back, glaring at him through tears. "Clara is going to murder you when she finds out about this." "Probably. And then Rosa's going to resurrect you just so she can murder you again." "Also probably." Despite everything, Prue laughed. It was shaky wet but real. "Let's go home," she said. "Yeah." Josiah looked at Sarah, who was watching them with something like wonder on her face. "Let's go home." Whoa. The trial of Harlan Vance lasted 3 weeks. It became the biggest news story in the territory. Newspapers from Denver to San Francisco sent reporters. The courtroom was packed every day with spectators who gasped at each new revelation. Vance named names, dozens of them. Brokers, buyers, corrupt officials, an entire network of men who had profited from the suffering of children for over 2 decades. One by one they fell. Judge Cornelius Ashworth, who had orchestrated the operation from the beginning, was convicted of 47 counts of trafficking in human beings. He was sentenced to hang. Margaret Ashworth testified against her husband. Her voice never wavered as she described what she'd seen, what she'd known, what she'd chosen to ignore for 20 years. Afterward, she found Josiah outside the courthouse. "It's over," she said. "After all this time, it's finally over." "Not quite." He showed her the journals, now worn from constant use. "There are still children out there, still names we haven't found. You're going to keep looking. For as long as it takes." Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. "My husband used to say that some people are born to be used by others, that it was the natural order of things." She shook her head. "He was wrong. I know that now. Because of you. I didn't do anything special. You did something everyone else was afraid to do." Margaret squeezed his hand. "You cared. About strangers, about children you'd never met, about people who had nothing to offer you in return." She pulled something from her pocket, a small leather pouch. "This is the last of Cornelius's hidden accounts. Money he squirreled away over the years, thinking he might need it someday." She pressed it into Josiah's hands. "Use it. For the ranch. For the children. For whatever comes next." Josiah felt the weight of it. Thousands of dollars, probably. More money than most families saw in a lifetime. "I can't accept this." "You can and you will." Margaret's voice was firm. "Consider it my penance. A small repayment for everything I should have done and didn't." "Where will you go?" "East, I think. I have a sister in Boston I haven't seen in years." Margaret smiled sadly. "Maybe it's time to start over. Become someone new." "You already have." She kissed his cheek. "Take care of those children, Josiah Thornton. They're lucky to have you." Then she walked away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving Josiah with a fortune he'd never expected and a mission that suddenly seemed possible in ways it hadn't before. The first snow of the new winter came early that year. Josiah stood on the porch of the ranch house watching children play in the yard. 23 of them now. 23 souls rescued, healed, given a chance at something better. Prue was teaching the younger ones how to build a snowman. Grace was trying to catch snowflakes on her tongue. Thomas had organized a snowball fight that had somehow pulled in Gray Elk, who was laughing harder than Josiah had ever seen. Quite a sight, isn't it? Clara joined him on the porch, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She handed him one. "A year ago, this place was empty," he said. "Just me and Rosa rattling around in all these rooms trying to pretend we weren't both dying inside. And now it's home." He put his arm around her. A real home. Clara leaned into him. "Rosa says we need to add another wing. The bunkhouse can't hold many more. Already talked to the builder. He's coming next week." "You're really doing this, aren't you? Turning the ranch into a permanent refuge." "I'm really doing this." Josiah watched Prue lift a younger child onto her shoulders. "Margaret's money will help. And the governor's office wants to make us an official territorial charity. Regular funding, legal protections." "The Thornton Home for Children," Clara smiled, "has a nice ring to it. Actually, I was thinking something different." "Oh." "The Emma Thornton Home." His voice caught. "For children who need a second chance. Just like she would have wanted." Clara was quiet for a moment. Then she reached up and wiped a tear from her cheek. "She'd be proud of you." "I hope so." Josiah pulled Emma's ribbon from his pocket. The pink silk was faded now, worn soft by years of handling. "I hope she knows what her papa's become." "She knows." Clara took his hand. "Trust me, she knows." The wedding was small. Just family and the children who had become family. They held it in the spring when the snow had melted and the wildflowers were starting to bloom. Rosa cried through the entire ceremony. Gray Elk performed the blessing, mixing traditions from his people with words that felt somehow universal. "Two streams meet," he said. "Separate waters becoming one river. This is the way of things. This is how broken people become whole again." Prue stood as Josiah's witness. Grace carried the rings. Thomas, who had barely spoken when he first arrived, read a poem about hope that he'd written himself. And when Josiah said, "I do," he meant it with everything he had. Clara became his wife. The children became their children. The ranch became something more than any of them could have imagined. A year passed. Then 2. Then 3. The Emma Thornton home grew. More buildings, more children, more families formed from the broken pieces of the old world. The journals were slowly emptied name by name, child by child, until only a handful remained. Some they couldn't find. Time had scattered them too thoroughly, erased their trails, hidden them in corners of the country too remote to reach. But most came home. On the 5th anniversary of the day Prue first walked into that saloon, Josiah called everyone together for a celebration. 47 children lived at the ranch now. 47 souls who had found family in the most unlikely of places. Some were old enough to work alongside the hands, learning ranching skills they'd carry with them forever. Others were still small, still healing, still learning to trust. But all of them belonged. "I want to say something." Josiah stood at the head of the long table, Clara beside him, their family stretching out in both directions. 5 years ago, I was a dead man walking. I'd lost my daughter, my faith, my reason to keep breathing. I spent my nights talking to ghosts and my days waiting to join them. He looked at Prue, who was now 14 and every bit as fierce as she'd been at 9. Then a little girl kicked open my door and demanded that I stop feeling sorry for myself and do something useful. Prue grinned. "You're welcome." Laughter rippled through the room. She was right. Josiah's voice grew serious. I'd been so focused on what I'd lost that I'd forgotten what I still had. The ability to help. The resources to make a difference. The choice to be good, even when being good was hard. He touched Emma's ribbon, still in his pocket after all these years. My daughter Emma used to ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I told her I wanted to be good. She said that was all she ever wanted for me. His voice cracked. I hope she can see us now. I hope she knows that her papa finally kept his promise. Silence. Then Grace's small voice piped up from down the table. She can see us, Papa. I know she can. Because she sent us to you. The words hit Josiah like a physical force. What did you say? She sent us. Grace smiled with the simple certainty of a child who had never learned to doubt miracles. When I was in the dark in that cage, I heard a voice. A girl's voice. She said not to be afraid. She said someone was coming. Someone with a broken heart who needed us as much as we needed him. Josiah couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Clara's hand found his under the table, squeezed tight. She said her name was Emma, Grace continued. She said she was your daughter, and she said to tell you something when I finally got the chance. What? Josiah's voice was barely a whisper. Grace stood up, walked around the table to where he sat, took his face in her small hands, just like Emma used to do. She said, tell Papa I'm so proud of him. Tell him I've been watching. Tell him he's become exactly who I always knew he could be. The tears came. Josiah couldn't stop them, didn't try. 3 years of grief, of guilt, of waiting to die, all of it washed away in a flood of salt and release. He pulled Grace into his arms, held her tight. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you, baby girl. And somewhere in that space between this world and the next, he could have sworn he heard Emma laugh. Later that night, after the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Josiah walked to the small cemetery on the hill behind the ranch. Emma's grave was there, properly marked now, with a stone carved by the best craftsman in the territory. Fresh flowers lay at its base. Grace and Prue brought them every week, rain or shine. Hey, sweetheart, Josiah said softly. It's Papa. The wind stirred, gentle, warm despite the season. I know you've been watching. I know you've seen everything. He knelt beside the stone, touched the carved letters of her name. I hope I made you proud. Silence, but not empty silence. The kind that felt full somehow. Present. Clara and I are expecting. The words came out rough. She told me this morning. A baby. Our baby. He laughed through tears. You're going to be a big sister, Em. Even now. Even from wherever you are. The wind chimes Clara had hung near the grave began to sing. That same melody. Emma's melody. I'm going to tell them about you, Josiah said. This baby and all the others. I'm going to make sure they know about the little girl who saved her papa's soul. Who taught him how to live again. He pressed his palm flat against the stone. I love you, Emma. I'll always love you. But I'm not waiting to die anymore. I'm living, really living, just like you wanted. The chimes fell silent, but the warmth remained. Josiah stood slowly. His knees didn't ache as much anymore. His heart didn't feel as heavy. Good night, baby girl, he whispered. See you in my dreams. He walked back to the house, to Clara waiting on the porch, to the family he'd built from broken pieces and impossible hope. And as he took his wife's hand and stepped inside, he knew finally, absolutely knew, that everything was going to be all right. Not perfect. Life was never perfect. But good. Real and good and worth living. The Emma Thornton home still stands today. Over 100 years have passed, but the mission remains the same, a place for children who have nowhere else to go. A family for those who lost their own. They say that on quiet nights when the wind is just right, you can still hear a little girl's laughter echoing through the halls. Still see the ghost of a man in a worn coat walking the grounds with a pink ribbon in his pocket, checking on children who sleep peacefully for the first time in their young lives. They say he smiles now, that ghost, that he finally found what he was looking for. And if you ask the children, they'll tell you the same thing Grace told Josiah all those years ago. They'll tell you that someone is always watching over the lost and the broken and the afraid. Someone who knows what it means to be saved. Someone who learned that the only way to heal your own heart is to help heal someone else's. Josiah Thornton was a broken man who became a father to the fatherless. He was a grieving soul who learned to love again. He was a dead man walking who chose to live. And in the end, that choice made all the difference. Not just for him, for everyone he touched, for every child who came through those doors, for every life that was changed because one desperate girl walked into a saloon and demanded that a stranger remember how to hope. This is the story of how broken things become whole, of how grief becomes grace, of how one man's darkest hour became the foundation for 100 years of light. And it all started with 5 words spoken by a bleeding child to a man who had forgotten how to live. They took my baby sister. In the end, that's what family is. Not blood, not law, not obligation. Just people who refuse to let each other stay lost in the dark.